I grew up in a small town, Croton-on-Hudson, New York, in the Hudson River Valley, north of New York City. While a good portion of the town's residents commuted to jobs in the city, many lived and worked in the construction trades in northern Westchester County. Like here in Philadelphia, these folks were predominantly Italian and Irish ancestors of the men who came to build the railroad, first up the Hudson River line, and the massive Croton Dam and the aqueduct that feeds most of New York City with water. Many of my friends were the sons of these hardworking people, culturally Catholic, deeply loyal to God and country. But I didn't live down in the town. My folks lived up on the hill, as it was known, a place more gentrified and more politically left-leaning than the town itself. In fact, Mount Airy, the name of the hill, became famous as a radical enclave and was known for many years as Red Hill. In the early 20th century, it attracted writers and artists and communists like the revolutionary journalist John Reed, who lived there with Louis Bryant before his trip to Russia and his eventual burial on the Kremlin wall. The 1981 movie Reds is about his life and has scenes from my hometown in it. The Red Hill hosted these socialists and communists and formed a significant hub in the 1930s and the 40s of what would become the American radical left. It also housed many artists, including many musicians, including the folk singer Lee Hayes, who was the band leader for the folk group The Weavers. Some of you of a certain age will know what I'm talking about. He lived next door to my best friend, and I would spend Sunday afternoons at Lee's house, where people would be just jamming. It was there that I met Pete Seeger and Don McLean, who wrote Bye Bye American Pie. The Hill was also known for its large Jewish population, mostly liberal and progressive Jews who worshiped at the Reformed Temple Israel down the street from where I lived. I grew up learning about Hanukkah and dreidels and latkes from some of my closest Jewish friends, and I have to say, as a kid, I was always jealous of the 8 days of Hanukkah, because they got presents on all 8 days and we only had Christmas with the one. At one point, I asked my mother why we couldn't become Jewish. She was raised a highbrow Episcopalian. She said, "It doesn't work that way, my dear. You have to be born of a Jewish mother." Somewhat correct, but later, as I learned, you could convert to Judaism. And there's been times in my career when I think I should have. I understood Judaism to be a religion of light. It was always that for me. In fact, in that Reformed synagogue in my hometown, they also sponsored my Boy Scout troop. And I remember the rabbi explaining to us once what he thought Judaism was in as short a sentence as possible. Not quite like Rabbi Hillel, who said, stand on one foot and say, serve others as you would have them serve you, golden rule, all the rest is commentary. But he said something close to that. He said, try being in God's light. We try to be in God's light and then serve one another as we would like to be served. Light was such a primary metaphor for Judaism that I always wondered if our flaming chalice wasn't somehow borrowed from our Jewish friends. To this day, the metaphor of light, especially at Hanukkah, speaks of the highest values of Judaism. And those values deeply align with our own Unitarian Universalist values. It connects us to the themes of courage and freedom and resilience and bringing light into darkness, which is something we are doing right now here. Many Unitarian Universalists see Hanukkah as one of the Jewish traditions which enhances our pluralistic religious life. We have core values inside our theological diversity of inclusivity, of shared values of love and justice, equity and interdependence, and we don't hold these as creeds, but as markers to how we should act. And I think that you will find the same is true of Judaism. Hanukkah, which the word literally means dedication, recalls, of course, the rededication of the temple, after resistance to oppression, and it is framed as a festival of faith and light. Ritual lightings of the menorah over the 8 nights symbolize the resilience, the choice to act even when those resources were insufficient, and the commitment to let one's light shine publicly in the face of fear. Hanukkah and our values meet in this light. But there's a tension now, and always has been, between the values of Judaism and the polarized world in which we now live. Even when I was growing up, there were fights in middle school. I remember them, between the working class kids in the village or the town center and the kids from the hill. This was largely fueled by a latent anti-Semitism that still lingers, of course, all over the world. And now this tension is even more complicated, isn't it? The state of Israel under Netanyahu has become increasingly Zionist and reactionary towards any population that is not Jewish. This is not the majority view of the people of Israel, who mostly think we should be able to live side by side. But it is a faction of the hard right that has taken over the government, not unlike what we are suffering from now. This reactionary right in Judaism has made strange bedfellows with the evangelical Christian movement, who supports this Judaism of the right wing because it will herald the second coming of Jesus, according to the book of Revelation. And our own administration, which has now labeled any dissident behavior as anti-Semitic. I remind you all, and I want this to be your takeaway for the day, that the state of Israel is not Judaism.
Amen.
The state of Israel, of course, came into being after World War II as part of what is known as the Balfour Agreements, wherein a portion of the Palestine territories would be given over to the Jewish people as a place of refuge and self-determination. There they established the state of Israel, and its many expansions over the years have been largely led by the Zionist wing. Now, the state of Israel as a state has claimed divine mandate to re-inhabit the lands of Palestine. This, they say, according to biblical history, and they perceive this as a mandate from God. As in the time of ancient Israel, the occupation entailed the removal of people who were already living there. These were not lands without anybody living in them. They were full of people, native Palestinians. And in each of the subsequent wars, Israel has expanded that territory by force. Since the 1970s, though, something else has started happening out of the right wing of the state of Israel that is even more disturbing. And that is taking land from Palestinians in what is known as settlement. This has been supported by the Israeli Defense Force and has led to the dispossession of thousands and thousands of Palestinians. Now, the culture that permits this sort of persecution, I think, is still being born of the collective guilt the Western powers felt towards the atrocities of the Holocaust. Indeed, having a refuge from that incredible persecution that Jews have been subjected to over millennia is noble and I think is right, in my opinion. But the continued displacement of Palestinians is simply wrong. It's my opinion that I agree with Ta-Nehisi Coates that Israel now lives in an apartheid state. The Jewish people, he said, in the state of Israel have sought to restore the honor lost to the Nazis by warring against Arabs in the breach. Prime Minister Netanyahu put this more succinctly back in 2015 when he was invited by the Republican majority of the House, not President Obama, to address the joint houses. And in this speech, if some of you may have remembered seeing it, I did look at it, he said, overlooking us all in this august chamber is the image of Moses. He was referring to the ceiling above the house chamber. He said, Moses led our people from slavery to the gates of the promised land. And before the people of Israel entered the land of Israel, Moses gave us a message that has steeled our resolve for thousands of years. Netanyahu said, "Be strong and resolute, be not in fear or dread of them." This from the book in Deuteronomy. Congress, or at least the Republican side of Congress, roared to their feet. And sadly, the them he was referring to was the Palestinian people. Judaism has a history that is steeped in cultures, including one of militancy and might. And from the biblical past and the stories of Abraham and Moses and Joshua, we learn of the accounts of occupation. But that's not what Hanukkah is about, to Tracy's point. What Hanukkah is about is not the occupation about a warring people against another people. It's about the rededication of love. The pogroms of the past, the Holocaust of the last century, should give people an ample reason to fight back. I don't argue that at all. But morally, my question is this to us all: where does the right of existence go beyond safety to the boundaries of conquest? I think simply separating politics and faith is just not enough. I think we, particularly as progressive people, need to reimagine and rehold Hanukkah as the light it was meant to be. The great Rabbi Jonathan Sacks once said, "Faith is the ability to see the miraculous in every day, not about waiting every day for the miraculous." That's the heart of Hanukkah. The heart of Hanukkah is faith in what we cannot yet see, courage to act even when we feel unprepared, and the hope that sustains us when the future seems uncertain. That's the meaning of Hanukkah to me. And of course, the state of Israel is going to be influenced by its faith. How could it be otherwise? And of course, Palestinians are going to be influenced by Islam. How could it be otherwise? But the faith that I'm calling us to is the faith that means there's a better world, not the end of the world. Do you hear me? When faith alone is seen as a justification for any means, jihad or occupation, we lose the thread of our humanity. And that's where we, as Unitarian Universalists and all good people, come in. Hanukkah can remind us that the light can begin small, a single flame, a single act of courage, and grow brighter and brighter as we continue to show up. And my friends, you are seeing that happen in real time in the political landscape of our country. We are growing brighter and brighter. Here's the thing: a miracle is not enough. The miracle is in what we do with what we have. The light we seek is not the end of all history. It's not the realization of God or nirvana or heaven. It's our deepest selves. It's our deepest selves that calls on us to use love at the center of our humanity to do something more than what we've been able to do in the past. This is what I'm getting at. What kind of faith, what method of faith could find its way into the Middle East? It's an age-old question. Administrations after administration in our country have been trying to bring peace to the Middle East. But I think we all know, and I'll be a little political here and go out on the limb and say that the only way that's going to happen is if there are two states. That's right. In many ways, as my colleague Christian Schmidt put it, the story of Hanukkah is a story of light being reimagined. While everyone seems to agree that Hanukkah is about a miracle, there are different interpretations of what the miracle was. And like any religious tradition, there are different threads of authority and definitely different schools of thought. But as we need to hold up the miracle of light as a means to a better world, not light as a symbol of conquest. We are drawn into the future from possibilities that we are not able yet to see. Our free faith is one that draws from many sources, including all the faith sources. The reason I'm wearing the stole I'm wearing today, given to me by an interfaith colleague on her deathbed, was that the freedom and posture of inclusion is central to Unitarian Universalism. It's not believe in whatever you want, it's believe in the best of what we have. That's the heart of our faith. It invites us to welcome people from so many different backgrounds into our big tent. And while this diversity brings blessings and richness, it also brings challenge. Opinions emerge in congregations with so many people and so many different ideas of what's right. And you all have ideas, and I'm certain I'm going to hear from someone in this congregation about what I'm preaching here this morning. But that's part of the magic of who we are, right? We're the big tent faith, where the diversity of belief is our starting place, not our ending place. And here we engage with perspectives that are so much larger than our own. Here we find that we engage with the light of Hanukkah. We are doing something more than just the miracle of oil lasting longer than it should have. We are doing something about the integrity of the story itself and the lives we want to live. Hanukkah is a celebration of Jewish religious cultural survival against incredible odds. But it's also the story about how harmful it is for a people to live under occupation and denied basic rights that others enjoy. As my colleague Kirsten Schmidt put it, I think maybe the Maccabees needed those 8 nights because they had to rededicate themselves as well. They had been warriors, but now the people needed to learn to live with each other as neighbors again. The Maccabees had to turn from battle to peacemaking. That is how the Jewish community stayed together, and that is why the festival of Hanukkah is celebrated today, because the miracle is in staying together. I think often of the difficulties of my childhood with the different people in my boyhood and how they fought with one another. And if I had the words then that I have now, I would say, don't you realize we're all here together? This is all we have. To succeed in turning our warrior self towards the compassion and peace that is at the heart of who we are, the light of these candles is only one such way. But it is the way that we remember it now and every year. And I invite all of us in the courage of that light and living that love. So may it be.